So, you know how I knew I was poor growing up? It was about like 10 years of my life, and I basically kept repeating the same exact socks. I had one pair of shoes every single year. And on top of that, I was sleeping in the equivalent of a sofa bed for like, with no room, no privacy for the first 10 years. And I was like, yeah, I think we're broke, you know? And I thought, for example, that I had a friend and that he was doing pretty well, you know, middle class, his family lived on a hill. He had his own bedroom with his brother. They had dogs. It was so nice. The rooms were amazing. And then years later, I find out that they were also struggling. And I was like, how is that possible? And what I figured out was basically poor people can lack money, middle class people can also lack money, and everyone can be poor. It's just that some poor people can be poor, for example, with no bedrooms, and other ones can be poor with what seems to be a lot, but those same things that they have keep them poor. So in this video, I call this the 4-for-4 strategy, and it's basically 4 things that keep poor people poor and 4 things that keep, for example, middle class people poor also. Now, if you were poor, you want to watch this video, obviously. And if you're middle class and you feel like, wow, I live paycheck to paycheck, the answer is you also watch this video because you're gonna see some solutions here to these problems. These are basically the four things that keep poor people poor and the 4 other things that also keep middle class people poor. And by the way, these are 4 different things. They buy different things, they do different things, they believe different things. It's all a belief system, but at the core level, it brings them to the same thing, and that's basically being poor. I'm broke, okay? So in this video, I'm gonna break everything down. As always, guys, like this video on top of also subscribe and hit the bell so you get notified. Now, the first 4 are going to be what poor people actually do to stay poor. And by the way, when I say poor, I don't mean, for example, living below the poverty line or a little bit above it, because what I learned is that you never wanna trust, like, for example, statistics, because not to say like I don't believe in statistics, that sounds weird because stats are stats, but what I'm saying is that you can't really take a stat and a number and say, well, you're not poor. But when you look at the actual figures, for example, when we were growing up, we couldn't qualify for food stamps, but we literally needed them, okay? But just because we were basically above by like $500,000, we could not actually get them. And my mom went to court several times, and they kept saying, yes, you can get them. And they kept having us reverse and reverse and reverse. It was a whole nightmare. My point is that having clear numbers to say you qualify, you don't qualify, it doesn't mean you're doing okay. It doesn't mean you're not poor. Now, here are the main 4 things that usually poor people are doing that are keeping them poor. The first thing is, a lot of poor people, they spend a lot of money on basically lottery tickets. Kind of crazy, but the majority of the money is spent by poor people on lottery tickets. Now, let's say you're making $10,000 a year, and the average person spending, for example, like $600. That's a real figure. Those are real stats. People that live in poor zip codes, they're spending about $600 every single year annually on lottery tickets, okay? That's crazy money. That's crazy expensive. Now, I would usually judge those people and say, hey, stop doing that. It's not a good idea. Invest in money, you know? It's just probability. It's just facts. Why are you doing that? Get frustrated, right? But then I read this book. It's called The Psychology of Money, and it said, Tommy, you can't judge people based on those facts because in reality, when you think about it, most people are living a dream, right? In reality, like I have a home, I have my little car, I live very nicely, right? Like it's nice for me and what I enjoy to live, right? But then when you have this chance of potentially accomplishing something that's actually massive and big like the lottery, and you hear about people actually winning it, the answer is you might actually want to play. And in your world, that might actually make sense, but in no earth does it actually make sense to spend so much money on lottery tickets when you're already broke. But it's not to say I don't understand where it comes from. I get it. But it's still a terrible idea, and you want to stop doing that because the odds are absolutely not in your favor. Number 2 is payday loans. And by the way, usually all these things you see in poor people's zip codes. When I was in the Bronx, you saw, for example, laundromats. You saw, for example, pawn shops. I went to the rich side, I didn't see none of that stuff. You know what I mean? Because they target us. So overall, number 2 is going to be payday loans. How do you get paid? And then you need a loan before you even get paid because you just don't have enough money. Now imagine paying somebody 15, 20% before you even get paid. The answer is that's how you stay poor because even before you earn the money, you already owe the money to somebody else. That's also a wealth killer. The number 1 wealth creator is your income. And if your income before you actually get it is already owed to somebody else, you're big trouble. You're in big trouble, okay? So that's something you also want to avoid. And I recommend get a budget. Handle your business. Get another job. right? Got to make sacrifices. And by the way, when I say stuff like this, it sounds like, oh my gosh, Tommy, I agree with you. It's so motivational, all this stuff. But it's also very hard, because sometimes you can be right on the edge, and if you make some extra income, they take away some stuff, and now you need to earn more money. And it's like this thing that's like you gotta take the sacrifice. It's not that it's easy. It's gonna be hard, but what else are you gonna do? You know what I mean? Now, number 3 is rent to own. A lot of folks, they have this dream, I want to own a home, but I'm going to rent first. I'm going to get some equity in there potentially. But in reality, most of those rent to own contracts, they're made for the buyer. Not the renter or the buyer, but the seller, okay? The seller. Those agreements, those documents are usually made in favor for the seller that's actually selling the property. And in reality, usually it doesn't make any sense because guess what? You might lock in, for example, like this price based on the future price, but in reality, if the market's down, you end up locking in this higher price and it's actually worth. The answer is usually those are terrible deals. And again, you don't usually see that on the rich side of town. Number 4 is going to be life. By the way, before I get here, I want to say this. Owning a home is not, for example, like this crazy cool thing to do. It's better to wait until you can actually afford a home. I know people that basically just bought a home, but they will never own it because they can't afford it. And a lot of people basically lose it. I know someone has 13, 14 years paying off a mortgage and they complain every day about, I struggle so hard to be able to pay this thing off. When will it end? So the answer is be very careful with the idea of just having this entire dream of like owning a home. Make sure it makes sense for you financially. It's okay to rent while you build up your income, increase it. That's the best way to actually increase, your wealth potential. If your wealth potential comes from your income and you have, for example, money for a down payment, use that money to actually help yourself improve as far as, for example, your income. Make more money. With more money, you can do a lot more. That's the core idea, core principle. Now, number 4 is going to be, for example, lifestyle fat. I know so many people, I've gone to people's houses where they have these couches, and it's where have these couches, they're wrapped in plastic because they're just there to be looked at. I know people where they have these purses that are like $400, and it's because they want to look the part, but they're not the part. I know people that have, for example, belts that are Gucci or they're fake or they wear fake stuff because they want to look a part. And by the way, I did that for a while. I wore fake stuff because I wanted to seem like I had some money. I was broke. I had no money, okay? And the big thing is, if you keep doing that, you're going to stay broke. And that's not good. Because one thing is being something, one thing is staying something. One thing is doing something, one thing is continuing to doing it after you know the truth. So the point is, if you're doing any of these 4, if you find yourself, for example, wow, I kind of have to change some things, take the L. Take the sacrifice and start doing it. Now, is it gonna be easy? The answer is no. I know people that it feels like they're basically drowning because they have kids. They have, for example, like a lot of responsibilities. They barely have time, and it's hard. But what else are you gonna do? You know what I mean? Like, what else are you gonna do? Now, number 2, guys, which is basically the middle class. What are these people doing? Because it almost seems like you have a house, you have a car, you have everything covered. So how could these people possibly be poor and they also have a good income? The answer is, if the most powerful wealth builder is your income, then how are these people poor? Because they tie up their income with these 4 main things. Number 1 is credit cards. A lot of middle class people, they have a lot of credit card debt. Imagine that. The average person has about a $6,000 balance. Now, imagine having to invest money or trying to become rich while you're paying a credit card company like 18 to 25% or 26% or 24% or 35%. You might say, I don't do pay loans because that's for poor folks, but you're over there with the credit cards and it's like, okay, you don't do pay loans, but you're borrowing a bunch of money, you're increasing your balance, you can't afford it, and you can't even pay the full balance every single month, and then you're just basically in debt. And then there's also people that basically, they overspend a bunch in the credit card and they say, hey, at least I'm paying it off in full every month, but you're still broke because you're still overspending. Sometimes the best thing to do is just cut the credit card and stop the habit. Number 2, student loan debt. The average student loan debt balance is about $37,000. Now, aside from me, and I had a balance of $21,000, I've never met someone that had a balance that low. Everyone I know has balances above $35,000, 40, 50, 60, 80. I know these people. And in reality, people owe a ton of money on student loan debt. And the answer is, Tommy, but this is an investment, right? Because you go to school, you're able to graduate with a good income. A lot of folks, they graduate and they don't exercise their career, do something different. A lot of folks, they graduate and they're in so much debt to the point where it kind of feels like all the income they have just goes towards covering the stuff. The answer is there are ways to go to school for free. There are ways not to go to the private school and basically earn the degree and basically make the same amount of money. There are ways to do all of these things. One of my friends works at Google, graduated with $35,000 in student loan debt, pay that thing off the minute he graduated with his bonus. The answer is there are ways to get these things done, but if your main focus is on fancy, notoriety, the answer is usually you get stuck with these crazy balances. I heard about the story with someone with over $1 million in student loan debt. I was like, how is this possible? You know what I mean? It's crazy. There are other things you can possibly do, and stop this idea of just like, oh, it's an investment. Yes, it's an investment, but what is your return on your investment? How long is it going to take you to actually pay this thing off? You know what I mean? Now, number 3, guys, is going to be big mortgage. That's crazy. You know, everyone thinks that a home is an investment. A home is just a stability asset. It stabilizes your lifestyle in a sense, because if you have that thing paid off, your cost of living goes down dramatically. But overall, if you're spending more than a third of your monthly income net on your home, you're probably overspending. I've seen people buy, for example, $500,000 houses, $700,000 houses, and they say, I can afford it. But if I made it a 15-year mortgage, they couldn't afford it. But 30 years, they could afford it. I know for a fact, if they offer 50-year mortgages, people would go ahead and basically spend that money like no tomorrow. Home prices would go up like crazy. And guess what? That would be the new normal. The answer is you don't want to be normal. You want to be able to own a home. So you want to limit yourself to 30% of your monthly income on a 15-year mortgage. That way you're able to pay this thing off as fast as possible and actually own it. How many people do you know that actually own a home? And when I say own it, I mean don't have a mortgage. I don't know many people like that. Well, in my neighborhood, I know a few people because I live in a blue-collar neighborhood. People basically like that don't spend any money. They're cheap like me. But the answer is most people, they have a home, but they'll never own it. It's kind of crazy. It's kind of sad too. I have an aunt. She keeps refinancing. She keeps remodeling the kitchen. She keeps doing something else. And the answer is, when will this end? The answer is, who knows? Be careful with this. Number four, whole life insurance. Whole life insurance is 10 times more expensive on average than term life insurance. Insurance is insurance. It's to cover you for a certain period of your life. I get it. You want to take care of your family. But paying $500 a month to build up some cash in your policy or whatever is stupid, is ridiculous, okay? When you can just say, for example, I'm going to get term life, pay 10 times less, invest the difference. That's my money now. Potentially even grow it tax-free also. And that's it. You know what I mean? It's pretty basic. You get the same coverage for 20 years. 20 years of investing is going to build you up to whatever that policy was also. So what's the point of paying so much money to cover your whole life when all you need is a section of your life to actually get things done, okay? Now, number 5, and the last one. I said 4 for 4, but now it's 4 for 9. I changed my mind, okay? Number 5 is basically car payments. Imagine that. The average new car payment is $700. Used car, $525. Imagine if somebody said, I'm going to buy a used hoopty or a used nice vehicle, ride it around for 15, 20, 30 years, invest the difference. The answer is everyone will be basically millionaires. But the answer is, when you think about this, it's so much bloat. It's so much extra fat. It's so much, you know, when you think about the student loan, you think about the mortgage, when you think about the car, when you think about this credit card, when you think about this thing, it's just so much to the point where you have this large income and it goes away. And when you look at the upper class, for example, and I mean like upper middle class or whatever, it's the same thing on a different level. Bigger balances with the Amexes, fancier neighborhoods, fancier student loan debt. It's all the same thing. And when you look at the rich people, the millionaires, the actual people that actually win the game, they live frugally, below their means. They don't have a lot of debt. They can handle business, have diversified investment. They take care of what they need to take care of. They don't live by appearances. They see money as an option to have freedom, right? That's the big difference, okay? Now let me know if you want me to make a video about 4 things that keep rich people rich, and I'll make that video. Now comment down below and say, what can we make the comment for today? Comment down below and say no, okay? No stuff. No. Comment down below no, so I know you made it all the way to the end of the video. And as always, like, subscribe, hit the bell so you're notified. Up here is another banger. Over here is my face. Subscribe. And as always, long-term team officially out. Doesn't matter where you are. Doesn't matter where you start. You have a way to finish off right. Peace.